Thank you for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay in this region now. Now, Southeast Asia's ASEAN bloc has decided not to send monitors to Myanmar's election in December. According to diplomatic resources, ASEAN has not reached consensus on sending observers under its own banner. However, member states are still free to send their observers on a bilateral basis. This decision represents a setback for the junta's efforts to gain international legitimacy. The junta's chief Min Aung Hlaing has represented the December 28 polls as a step towards reconciliation in the civil war that was triggered by his 2021 military coup. Meanwhile, ASEAN Chair Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has repeated calls for quote-unquote immediate ceasefire and highlighted the need for inclusive political dialogue before elections can be held. As per reports, the upcoming Myanmar elections will not include voting in large areas controlled by pro-democracy guerrillas and ethnic minority armies who are fighting the military regime. Additionally, Human Rights Watch has condemned the elections, and Amnesty International has accused the junta of using repression to silence the critics of the poll. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Sudakarji. Thank you very much, Major General Sudakarji, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, even in earlier discussion, you did mention Myanmar, but now looking at this, why is ASEAN not sending officials to monitor, and how does ASEAN's decision affect Myanmar's international legitimacy and the credibility of its upcoming elections?
Asoma, you have raised two very important subparts of the question, and I would start with the coup which replaced the democratic government of Myanmar in 2021 in the month of February. With the replacement of the governance being taken over by the military junta, there were a lot of violent activities and very repressive measures were undertaken. With the repressive measures undertaken by the military junta, the public could not have their aspirations, so democratic norms and the demands and the rights could not be fulfilled. So therefore, there was an agreement to bring this violence to an end or some kind of control. There was an agreement called as 5-point agreement between the ASEAN nations or as a bloc and the Myanmar junta. Myanmar junta was Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, and the agreement essentially included the 5 important issues. First was the immediate end of violence. Second was to have a dialogue among all parties. The third was appointment of a special envoy. And fourth one was humanitarian assistance by ASEAN countries should be allowed and must be facilitated to reach out to the affected victims. And the last was the special envoy should be allowed to visit to Myanmar to meet all parties. While on one hand, the Senior General Min Aung, he defied each of the points, and at the same time, he kept on overseeing the brutal nationwide crackdown aimed at suppressing millions of people opposed to the military rule. At the same time, the ASEAN kept on putting pressure on Myanmar to bring in some sense of orderliness. Now, while I have covered all this, behind the scene, what is happening is there is a huge strategic rivalry going on. Since you don't have time, allow me to touch only important milestones. Way back in 1988, there was a pro-democracy movement, and against which the complete Myanmar dispensation had come down very heavily, and there were large number of assassinations and extrajudicial killings, and people have been killed in point blank broad daylight.
Yes. So, Major General Sudakarji, thank you for joining us, but unfortunately we're running out of time for that discussion. So now we move on. Thank you very much, as always, for joining and sharing that insight. Now we move on and we stay on this region. Speaking at a news conference on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed his outrage over the dire situation in Myanmar. Let's listen in.
appalled by the deplorable situation in Myanmar. The military takeover in 2021 has piled calamity upon calamity. Villages bombed or burned, thousands killed, millions displaced, regional stability at risk. A military attacking the civilians it's meant to protect. And now the spectre of elections within an active conflict. The atrocities and the cycle of impunity must end.
The UN Secretary-General has further backed ASEAN's efforts and expressed support for the ASEAN 5-point consensus, which aims to restore democracy and human rights in Myanmar. Let's listen into what he has said in this regard.
I reiterate my call for an immediate end to the violence, a genuine commitment to inclusive dialogue, and a credible path back to civilian rule, starting with the swift release of all those arbitrarily detained. The United Nations fully supports the ASEAN 5-point consensus, and I welcome strengthened cooperation between my Special Envoy, Julie Bishop, with the ASEAN counterpart. And I applaud ASEAN's commitment to providing humanitarian assistance to the people of Myanmar. The way forward must lead to a restoration of democracy, institutions anchored in the rule of law and human rights.
Additionally, Guterres has shown strong concerns over the credibility of the upcoming junta elections in December, stating that they will not be free and fair and will not solve Myanmar's problems. He has also further urged a focus on increasing humanitarian assistance and paving a way for political solution that leads to civilian rule and constitutional government. Now we move on to Turkey. A Turkish court